Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're heading back in time to ancient Egypt. We've got YouTube videos, Wikipedia articles, even some museum resources. And we're going to try to pull out the good stuff about this civilization.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about ancient Egypt is that it's not just about dusty tombs and relics. It's a story of human ingenuity, resilience, and cultural innovation that still has meaning for us today.
Okay, so let's unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
To really understand ancient Egypt, we've got to start with the Nile.
Yeah, the Nile was everything. It's hard to imagine, but Egypt wasn't always a desert. Like around 10,000 years ago, it was a lush savanna.
Oh, green Egypt.
Yeah, teeming with life.
That's wild. What happened? How did it become the desert we know today?
Well, it was climate change, like a big shift in the Earth's axis. And the rains dried up and the savanna turned into a desert. And this forced people and animals to the Nile, to their only source of water. It's all like you're living in this increasingly dry environment, desperate for water. And the Nile becomes this lifeline, drawing people together, forming these settlements. It's almost like how major cities today develop around key resources.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And it really highlights how important it was to adapt to those changes. And the ancient Egyptians did that really well.
That's real.
But here's something you might not know. Even before they settled along the Nile, these early Egyptians were looking up at the stars.
Wait, really? What were they looking for up there?
At Nabta Playa, which is a site in southern Egypt, there's a 7,000-year-old stone circle that they think was used as a calendar to help them predict the summer rains. And these predictions were critical. It shows they had pretty advanced astronomy even then.
It's like their own ancient weather forecasting system. So they're mastering the environment down here. And the mysteries of the cosmos up there, pretty impressive. But how did these settlements along the Nile become the unified kingdom we know as ancient Egypt? Well, that's where things get interesting. There were two different cultures that emerged: Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north.
So it was like two mini Egypts, each with their own ruler and customs and way of life. Kind of like how different regions in the U.S. have their own distinct identities.
Exactly. And the split eventually led to conflict. And that's where King Narmer comes in. He was a powerful ruler from Upper Egypt, and he's the one who conquered Lower Egypt and unified the two lands under his rule.
This Narmer guy sounds like a real game changer. Is there any evidence of this epic conquest?
There is. We have this thing called the Narmer palette. It's a carved stone slab that shows Narmer wearing the crowns of both Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolizing his victory and the birth of a unified kingdom.
Oh, wow. So it's like their version of a war monument, declaring to the world, hey, we're one nation now under my rule.
Yeah, it's fascinating how power and symbolism have always been a part of shaping history. But unification wasn't just about military might, was it? What else helped bring these two distinct cultures together? Well, religion played a huge role. The Egyptians had a complex religious system with all these gods, associated with animals and natural forces, and even abstract concepts.
It's amazing to think about how their beliefs influenced everything they did. Did they have a god for everything?
Pretty much, they had gods for the sun, the Nile, the harvest, childbirth, even the underworld. And these weren't just symbolic figures, they were deeply connected to their daily life, their understanding of the world, and what they hoped for after they died.
Imagine a world where gods are as real as the weather. So their belief system was so ingrained that it acted like this unifying force, right?
Right. It brought people together under this shared set of beliefs and practices, and this shared faith, plus a strong central authority, set the stage for the next chapter in ancient Egyptian history, the Age of Pyramids.
Now you're talking, everyone loves pyramids.
Oh, right.
But why pyramids? What was the big idea behind these giant structures?
To understand the pyramids, you have to understand their whole concept of the afterlife. They believed death wasn't the end, but a transition to this eternal existence. And to get there, you needed to preserve the body, and you needed to give the dead everything they'd need in the afterlife.
So like, you're an ancient Egyptian, and you believe that when you die, you're basically moving to a new neighborhood, the afterlife. And you need a house, right? But not just any house, a house fit for eternity. That's where the pyramids come in.
You got it. The pyramids were elaborate tombs designed to house the pharaoh's body and all their earthly stuff they'd need in the afterlife.
It's like packing for a really, really long trip. But these pyramids weren't just practical. They were symbolic too, right?
Absolutely. Symbols of power, showcasing the pharaoh's authority and their connection to the gods. And they were ambitious too. Just think about the architectural genius and their belief in the legacy of their rulers.
Okay, and speaking of ambition, let's talk about the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's huge, GE. How did they build something so massive back then?
Yeah, the construction of the Great Pyramid was an insane project. It took massive manpower, resources, and a ton of ingenuity. They think it took more than 20 years to build, and tens of thousands of skilled workers.
20 years. That's longer than it takes to build some skyscrapers today. And they did it all with copper tools and wooden levers and pure human effort. It's mind-blowing.
Totally. And they weren't just stacking rocks, they were using math and aligning everything with the stars.
So they were architects, engineers, astronomers, all in one. Makes you wonder what other secrets those pyramids are hiding. But sadly, the Old Kingdom, the pyramid building era, came to an end. What happened? Did they just run out of rocks?
Haha. No, the Old Kingdom probably declined because of a lot of things, like a weak central authority, bad harvests, maybe even a loss of faith in their leaders. This unstable time is called the First Intermediate Period.
Yeah, it reminds you that even the strongest civilizations are vulnerable. But the ancient Egyptians were nothing if not resilient. They faced their challenges, adapted, and rebuilt.
You're right. And their story didn't end there. Out of the First Intermediate Period came a new era, the Middle Kingdom. And that's a story for another time.
All right, so stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started on this journey through ancient Egypt.
Welcome back to our deep dive on ancient Egypt. So we left off with the Old Kingdom crumbling, leaving all this instability.
Yeah, that's right. And from that came the Middle Kingdom, a time of renewal, growth, a real blossoming of their culture.
Yeah, it was a period of crazy resilience and creativity. The pharaohs were all about expanding trade, improving infrastructure, strengthening the country. Think of it like a national reset.
So after all that chaos of the First Intermediate Period, Egypt was getting its act together. It's fascinating how civilizations, just like people, go through these ups and downs. But did this newfound stability last?
Well, they had a few good centuries. But as always, no golden age can last forever. And around 1650 BC, Egypt faced a new threat.
The Hyksos.
Hyksos. Who were they? They were from the Eastern Mediterranean. They came to Egypt and eventually took over Lower Egypt. And they brought new tech with them, like chariots.
Wait, chariots? Like with horses and guys with swords? That must have been a huge change on the battlefield.
Oh yeah, imagine. The Egyptians were used to fighting on foot. Then all of a sudden, they're up against these fast-moving chariots.
So the Hyksos basically rolled in with their fancy new tech and outmaneuvered the Egyptians. It's kind of like how technology disrupts things today, isn't it?
Totally. It was a big turning point for the Egyptians. Their kings were forced to retreat to Thebes, leaving Lower Egypt under Hyksos control.
So Egypt was divided again. What a setback. But they fought back, right?
They did, and this is where it gets really interesting. They didn't just rush into another fight. They watched the Hyksos. They learned their tactics or technology. They waited for the right moment.
So they were learning from their enemy, adapting. What a comeback story.
Yeah.
Did they drive out the Hyksos?
They did. Led by pharaohs like Ahmose I, they pushed the Hyksos out of Egypt. And this started a new era, the New Kingdom, probably the most powerful period in Egyptian history.
The New Kingdom. Yeah. This is epic. What was Egypt like at this time?
The New Kingdom was all about expansion, wealth, cultural achievements. They really wanted to secure their borders and show their strength beyond the Nile. Pharaohs, like Thutmose III, led military campaigns, expanding the empire as far as Syria.
So they went from being conquered to conquerors. That's quite a turnaround.
It really shows their resilience, their ability to learn and grow, and all this new power and wealth led to amazing art, architecture, cultural exchange. Think huge temples, giant statues, literature, science.
Wow, it sounds like a truly incredible time. But were there any problems during the New Kingdom?
There were, and one of the most interesting involves Akhenaten. He tried to change Egyptian religion. He wanted people to worship only one god, Akhenaten, the sun disk.
Wait, one god? That's a pretty radical idea for a civilization that had a god for everything. Why would he try to change their beliefs like that?
That's a good question. And historians are still arguing about it. Some think he was being sincere, wanted to simplify their religion. Others think he was just trying to grab power, weaken the priests.
So it was like a religious and political revolution. Did it work?
Not really. People resisted, especially the priests. After Akhenaten died, Tutankhamun, the boy king, reversed all the changes, brought back the traditional gods.
It's interesting that even powerful rulers can't force religious change. But speaking of powerful rulers, we have to talk about Ramesses II.
Oh yeah, Ramesses II, probably one of the most famous pharaohs. He ruled for over 60 years. And he was known for his building projects, military campaigns. He even built the Abu Simbel Temple complex, the one that had to be moved in the 1960s, to save it from the Aswan Dam.
Wait, they moved an entire temple?
They did. Cut it into blocks, moved them, and put it back together. Crazy engineering.
That's a story for the ages. Okay, so back to Ramesses II. What were some of the big events during his reign?
Well, there was the Battle of Kadesh, a big fight with the Hittites, an empire in Anatolia. It was massive, with thousands of chariots and soldiers, and it ended in a draw.
A clash of titans.
It was a turning point in the ancient Near East. And the cool thing is, it led to the first known peace treaty between two empires.
So Ramesses II was a warrior, builder, and a peacemaker. No wonder he's so famous. But even the New Kingdom didn't last forever. What caused it to decline?
A bunch of things, really. Internal struggles, economic problems, and new invasions. The Libyans from the west, and the Sea Peoples from the north.
Sea Peoples, that sounds ominous. Who were they?
We don't really know. They were raiders who attacked all over the Mediterranean, including Egypt. Their origins are such a mystery.
Like pirates from the past. So with all these challenges, what happened to the New Kingdom?
It declined, and that started the Third Intermediate Period, another unstable time. But like I said, the Egyptians were resilient. They faced these new problems, adapted, and found ways to hold on to their culture.
Amazing. This civilization went through so much over thousands of years. But okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about their incredible architecture. Those pyramids, wow.
Yeah.
How did they build such massive structures?
It's a testament to their skills, their organization, their engineering. They needed a huge workforce, sophisticated techniques, and a real understanding of math and astronomy.
Okay, break it down for me. How did they quarry those huge stone blocks?
Lots of copper tools, wooden levers, and a lot of ingenuity. Imagine cutting trenches around the blocks, then using wooden wedges that they'd soak in water. This would make the wood expand and crack the stone. And then they had to move these giant blocks, some weighing tons. They used sledges, rollers, ramps.
Wow, amazing what they could do with such basic tools.
It really is. And they incorporated complex math and aligned everything with the stars.
So it wasn't just brute force, it was brain power too.
Exactly. Building these monuments took technical skill, artistic vision, and religious belief.
It makes you think about everything that went into those structures. More than just tombs or temples, they were expressing their whole worldview.
You got it. That's why we're still fascinated by them today. They give us a glimpse into a civilization that was, in many ways, as complex as ours.
And speaking of sophistication, let's talk about their writing. Hieroglyphs. How did they develop such a complex system of communication?
That was a major achievement. Hieroglyphs let them record their history, their beliefs, their daily lives, and it helped preserve their legacy for us.
Yeah, it's like they unlocked this whole new level of communication, going from simple drawings to a system that could convey complex ideas and stories. And those symbols are so beautiful to look at.
They are intricate symbols showing gods, people, animals, objects, even abstract concepts.
But how did it work? Was it like our alphabet with symbols for sounds?
Well, not quite that simple. Hieroglyphs could be words, sounds, or even clues to a word's meaning.
Oh, wow.
It was a mix of different systems, like the symbol for house could be the word house, or the sound pray, or it could mean something related to a building.
It's like a multi-layered puzzle. No wonder it took scribes years to learn it. What kinds of things did they write about?
Everything. Religious texts, royal orders, business deals, letters. And because they were so good at keeping records, we know a lot about their lives, their religion, their farming, even their hopes and dreams.
It's incredible that we can still read those ancient texts.
Yeah, and the discovery of the Rosetta Stone back in 1799 was key to figuring out how to read hieroglyphs.
Like a time machine, letting us hear the voices of the past. Okay, so we've talked about monuments and writing, but what about the everyday lives of the people?
Let's dive into that. What they ate, what they wore, how they had fun, what challenges they faced.
Let's see what it was like to be an ancient Egyptian. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've talked about the rise and fall of kingdoms, pharaohs and pyramids, even deciphered some hieroglyphs. But today, let's focus on the people themselves, the everyday Egyptians.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the grand stuff. But this civilization was built by regular people.
Right, so what was life like for them? What did they eat? What did they wear? What did they do for fun?
Well, life for most revolved around the Nile, the agricultural cycle. Most were farmers, working the land, growing wheat, barley, flax.
So waking up before sunrise, the Nile there, sparkling, and then out to the fields. It's hard work, but essential.
Exactly. And after a long day, You gather with family, neighbors, a simple meal, bread, beer, maybe some dates or figs. Meat was more for special occasions.
Bread and beer, a classic combo. I can get behind that. What about clothes? Was it all white robes?
Uh-huh. Well, linen was common. Good for the heat. Simple clothes, loose-fitting. Men, often kilts or loincloths. Women, long dresses. If you were wealthy, you could have fancier clothes. Jewelry, intricate designs.
So fashion was important back then, too.
Yeah.
But there had to be some fun, right?
Yeah.
What did people do for fun in ancient Egypt?
Oh, they had lots of leisure activities. Board games were popular, music, dancing, festivals, religious celebrations. Those were times to be social, eat good food, honor the gods. And of course, the Nile. Swimming, fishing, boating.
Sounds pretty good. But I'm sure there were challenges, too. What were some of the downsides?
Well, life could be tough. Drought, famine were always threats. Diseases, health problems. And the Nile, as much as it gave life, could also flood and cause damage.
So even with all their advancements, they were still at the mercy of nature.
That's right. And we have to remember, not everyone was equal. There was a social hierarchy. Pharaoh at the top, then nobles, priests, scribes, then commoners.
So a pyramid structure even in their society.
Exactly. And while you could move up sometimes, you were mostly stuck where you were born. But even
Wow.
with those challenges, they adapted, they innovated, they created an amazing culture.
Speaking of their culture, let's talk about mummies. Why were they so focused on preserving bodies after death?
They believed that death was not the end, just a transition to the afterlife. And to get there, you needed your body.
So it wasn't just about spooky tombs. It was about ensuring a good afterlife.
Right. Mummification was a long process. Removing organs, drying the body with salt, wrapping it in layers of linen.
It sounds like a mix of science and art. And it worked. Some mummies are perfectly preserved after thousands of years.
Amazing, isn't it? And it wasn't just for pharaohs. Anyone who could afford it could be mummified.
So you're preparing for this journey to the afterlife.
Yeah,
You need your body, your possessions, maybe even some instructions to help you along the way.
that's where the Book of the Dead comes in. Spells, prayers, instructions to help you in the afterlife. To reach the field of reeds, their version of paradise.
So like a guidebook for the afterlife.
Uh-huh, yeah. They even put amulets and spells in the wrappings to protect against evil spirits.
They really thought of everything. It makes you wonder what we can learn from them.
That is a good question. We might not have the same beliefs, but their focus on the afterlife, their respect for ancestors, their connection to nature, it tells us something about being human.
It's fascinating how a civilization so old can still teach us things.
It really is. Their art, architecture, writing, their beliefs, they still inspire us. Ancient Egypt shows that human creativity is amazing and that even lost civilizations can still speak to us.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into ancient Egypt. From kingdoms to daily life, we've covered a lot.
It's been a journey, but I hope this inspires you to keep learning. There's always more to discover about ancient Egypt.
That's right. And who knows, maybe you'll uncover some secrets of your own.
Until next time, keep exploring.